Welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture Podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about the OA Part 1, Episode 6. A very, very short episode.
This will be a very short podcast episode as well because it was a short episode. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to be able to talk longer than the 30 minutes that the episode actually took. So.
Yeah. But we'll try our best. I mean, we want to give you quality over quantity when it comes to our podcast. So that's why this one will be just a little bit shorter than usual.
Yeah. As always, we are inviting you to rewatch the OA with us, going through Part 1 together. And this last one, we'll talk about that here in just a minute. It's a good opportunity to jump in and see what everyone's talking about.
Yeah, sure.
Because, Game of Thrones is ending this week. You're going to need to,
watch something else.
Watch something else.
Yep.
So, into our summary and review. This was a brief episode, so the summary is Hap goes to visit and subsequently kills his former friend, and everybody else waits for something to happen. Yep,
that's pretty much what happened. Let's see, what else can I add? I'm trying to think of what a group of 5 people are called.
The angels, yeah.
Yeah, those people in the glass cages are still waiting for the 5th movement, and then they get it.
No, they don't get it in the episode.
Oh, they don't get it in the episode, and they still don't have it.
I don't think they get it until the last episode, but, we're not going to jump ahead.
Yeah.
My review of the episode, it was short. It was good despite its shortness. I think it moved on from the last one, where the last one I didn't really enjoy it all that much, but this one was a little bit more, what's really going on? Asking the questions again rather than, filling time.
Yeah. Is that your review?
That is my review.
Okay. My review is that I didn't feel like it was adding too much to the story at first. But then the more I think about it, it just goes to show how Hap just thinks himself to be some kind of a hero or something, because he can't really distinguish how he is still doing something unethical compared to his friend.
And even his friend was like, there's no such thing as ethics, yeah.
Yeah, so I just think it was kind of funny that he thinks that he has the moral high ground in
because
their
he's not actually killing his...
But he is killing them and keeping them in cages and not allowing them to change clothes and giving them icky food. So, it's just very strange to me. But, not everybody can see what they're doing is wrong. So, that's Hap for you, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess that's something that I could have talked about more, but I think it was just a throwaway line. And so why talk about ethics on a throwaway line of there is no such thing as good or bad? And it's a very short dialogue that I think was really just thrown in there to show that Hap does kind of think about it, that Hap is a bit conflicted and making him more of a real person rather than just the angel killer.
Well, I think that it also goes to show that he has more... Well, even when he's sitting there talking to the OA, he views them more as partners in the whole thing, where she's like, I'm not your partner. Like, you are my captor. You've kidnapped me. Mm-hmm. I'm here against my will. So anyway.
One of the symbols that is brought up a few times throughout the episode is a garden, and if you've seen Part 2 by now, you know that this plays into Part 2. This is what I said we were going to talk about here in a little bit, and this episode shows that they did have they had more planned out when they were writing the first season.
And that's another thing too I forgot to add in my review. There was things within this episode that directly tied in to Part 2.
Oh, yeah. Like Buck's mirror being cleared off. The garden imagery. Let's see. Well, it was the garden imagery was more in the dialogue.
Oh, the memory loss too. That when if you travel,
Memory loss.
yep.
Yes, that was a big one. That just seemed like a throwaway line, but it played a big role in part two.
Yep.
Yeah, that was something that like they put it in there, but it was like nobody paid attention.
Yep. So it gives me a new perspective on part 2 now, because now I'm like, what are some like throwaway lines that they said that could be important to the next part?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this very short episode.
Yes. But I wanted to focus on gardening rather than. There's this term that's put out, and it was in a parenting book that I think we've talked about last year. That while I was mowing the lawn, I was listening to a podcast, and it was about this book about the difference between parenting in a gardening context rather than a carpentry context. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because I saw it a lot in the way that Hap and his friend were dealing with their patients. That they were patients. I'm using that more in a quote term.
Are you going to go into the difference between carpentry and gardening?
Yes, yeah, okay. I was just bringing that up. Was that in gardening, that that you're going to plant a seed, you're going to, do what you can, you're going to control what you can, and everything else is up to luck. Luck whether the weather cooperates with you, luck whether the soil cooperates with you, luck whether the animals will not come by and eat your plants. There are so many variables that you can't control in it, and you have to be okay with that in gardening. Whereas in carpentry is a precise profession where you cut the wood exactly to fit your other pieces of wood. You cut it exactly to fit whatever it is that you're building. That if you're planning on building something, that you go with a precision instrument,
which in carpentry is not bad. I mean,
that's perfect. That's
how things need to be done.
Exactly. And in carpentry, there's what type of wood you need for a project. Like exactly how it should come out. And that's where the precision comes in. Whereas in gardening, you don't know how your plant's going to turn out.
Yeah, I mean, you can have as much gardening skill as you possibly can, but there's always going to be that one plant that just went haywire, and sometimes you do very little, and then the plant just flourishes, and you have tomatoes up the wazoo and don't know what to do with them. So it really, again, like you were saying, like gardening, it's more like a flip of a coin sometimes.
Yeah, and that was her whole point in her book on the parenting was that so many parents treat raising a child as carpentry rather than gardening. That you're only able to control so many variables. You can't control all the variables when it comes to your child. That they're going to do what they're going to do, and you do your best to try to help to guide them in the path that you want them to go in.
I'm thinking right now to what we did this morning. We went to a park, and our son very much surprised us in his climbing ability.
Oh my goodness.
Like he just went after it, and it was a little terrifying at first. I had to remind him to keep, look down at your feet, see where your feet are going to go. But yeah, he just took off.
That the kid has no fear. Like it was a 3-story playground with a 3-story slide, and we're like, he's going to want to go on the slides that are more his size, that are shorter and everything else. Nope. Immediately, as soon as he gets there, climbs to the very top of this 3-story playground and goes down the slide.
Yep.
Like, he's 3. What in the world is he doing?
Yep. And he did not want to be slowed down one bit. He would not let us control any of the variables in the circumstance. He just wanted to do what he wanted to do.
Well, and I see this is the thing with things like political science, with especially this I can't even call it science, whatever happened his friend are doing.
Mystical arts.
In mystical arts. They're more Doctor Strange than after the accident rather than Doctor Strange before the accident.
Yeah.
So, it's like their hypothesis, they're treating it more like a theory of, there being something beyond death. And they're out to prove themselves rather than to disprove, which is the scientific method. Is you go out to disprove your hypothesis, and if you're proven right, great, you move on to it being a theory, then you continue testing it to make sure that it will work in other circumstances and in other variables. And that's the thing, is that they're treating it as they can control all the variables. And so this is where it's going to go, and this is what's going to prove to them. And Hap, I think, is more open-minded about that in this. He's like, no. There's not life after death. There's just life. Life is everywhere. It's multiverse. And he says the garden of universes and all these forking paths. And so I think really, ultimately, I think this is something where it's coming down to that gardening thing, is you can't control all the variables. And this is very much, I think, you just showed me a video from the
Healthcare
triage about pragmatic trials for medicine, where they were taking people and they were working with them and saying, is this working for you? And they were seeing whether the non-opioid painkillers were helping them rather than opioids, and seeing the efficacy versus the efficiency of the medications. And I think this is very something that happened. His friend should have taken into context well beforehand, before they even had this conversation on whether ethics exists or not.
Yeah, I mean, they're doctors. That's part of their training, but whatever.
Well, and this is the thing, is that I don't see where we can have anything that's going to be broad sweeping like that. You can't have something that's like, you're going to say, this will work for everybody, because everybody's different, right? There's we all have different variables in our lives. And this is why we like different things. Like, I prefer the MCU. The MCU had a big impact on me. We just talked about this. Whereas you, it was an impact, but it wasn't like life-changing or like...
No, it was not life-changing.
not as impactful to you as it was to me.
Yeah.
But do you think that there are, in certain circumstances, things that you can have broad sweeping rules, like you can have that black and white, yes or no kind of thing for human beings?
I think the only thing that it might work for would be like the workplace. It's the only thing that I can think about. Like you guys can't, like, most workplaces have rules against being late, or they have like a window of how much you can be late by before you get like penalized.
Yeah.
Like those types of things I think are fine. But that's about it. Like, I can only come up with workplace examples. I can't come up with...
Well, aside from murder. Murder, I think, is wrong in all cases. So, but then you have to define murder, and that's where it gets into a gray area.
Yeah, and like assisted suicide, is that murder, and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that gets kind of wonky.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough talking about that and getting us into a hole.
Yeah, that's a can of worms, so I'm going to leave over there because of what's going on in the United States of America right now. We're not going to open that can of worms.
Yes.
Suffice to say that we both agree on something being just horrible. Anyway, moving on. Can science, when it comes to people that, you can't control all the variables, can it be accurate? Or more accurately, can it be precise?
Well, no. I mean, in clinical trials, you can try to eliminate as many variables as you possibly can, but no matter what drug you're testing for, you're not going to find a drug that's going to work on all people. That's why, like, Tylenol, for example, isn't as effective to relieve pain for some people as it is for other people. That's just one example. And that doesn't necessarily mean that Tylenol doesn't relieve pain. It's just it doesn't relieve pain for a certain part of the population.
Yeah, and I think it all comes down to luck. It all comes down to whether you're lucky enough to have rain, for instance, to grow your garden. You're lucky enough to live in an area where your plant is going to thrive because of the humidity or because of the amount of sunlight that it gets, or whatever other variable that you can possibly control, where you plant things or where you do things like this. And I think this is something that, again, Hap got lucky with his 5 subjects that, he chose them because they that one variable that he controlled, that they all had NDEs. And I don't think that his friend necessarily was concerned about that variable.
No, he wasn't, I don't think.
Oh, can we say a mention about another lucky thing with Hap's disguise that it worked?
Oh yeah,
he was lucky that it worked.
I mean, he was just like, "Oh, don't mind me, this random guy who's holding a scarf over his face." Like he's clearly trying to hide himself. I don't know. I just was like, seriously, folks.
And everybody's just going to not pay him attention.
Yeah.
They're like, some weird guy is walking around the hallways with a scarf over his mouth.
Well, and the one nurse was just like, when he was saying, hey, there's people down in the basement, and he just like walked away. She didn't say like, hey, can you stop and like tell me a little bit more about what's going on? She would just
she goes, what? And then
yeah,
he's gone? Like, seriously.
No, he would have been chased down and be like, what do you mean? And security would have been involved. And yeah, anyway.
Luck. It all comes down to luck in those variables that you can't control.
Yep. So again, since this was a very short episode, there wasn't too much to pick apart here. So the one thing that kind of came to my mind during this episode is that patience is a virtue. Because multiple times during this episode, the OA mentions how they were still waiting for the 5th movement. And they had been waiting for a long time. And this is the most time they've gone without gaining any new insight into the movements. And you can definitely tell that a lot of time has passed. For me, I noticed it within her clothes. Like, her dress is basically a rag at this point. There's holes everywhere. Like, it's literally falling apart. You can look at everybody else's clothing. The only one who the clothes aren't so bad is Renata, and that's just because she is newer than everybody else.
Yeah, and because of Homer's escape attempt, he kind of ruined the new clothes that he got.
Yeah. But during this time frame, it almost seems as though they've gotten, I don't know if maybe calmer is the right word, but they're not as like frantically like searching for it, I guess. Yeah. It's more like, it'll come when it'll come at this point in time. I already talked about how Rachel still hasn't found a movement yet. And also, too, that Hap, for some reason, thinks that the OA is his partner instead. But I think the reason why he thinks that way is because so much time has passed. And he has had actual conversations with the OA that he feels this weird connection to her when she was just like, dude, you kidnapped me.
And killed me multiple times.
Yes. We are not friends. I don't know what else I can say to make this clear to you. So that's kind of strange to me.
Also, another thing about Rachel is that Rachel doesn't get the movement, and she doesn't have a voice in the second season. This is another kind of play
Are we sure
forward.
she doesn't get the movement?
Yeah, she doesn't get the movement.
Who gets the next movement?
The last movement is from the wife of the sheriff. But again, we're not going to move forward.
Oh yeah, sorry, totally forgot about that. Anyway, talking about patience. When have you had to experience extreme patience? I'm not talking about like waiting in line, like at the grocery store while a lady writes a check. Like, I'm talking about something that's going to take like
multiple time.
like months, if not
Yeah.
years.
I think I've talked about how in my life before I've kind of felt like I was in this waiting period, waiting for my life to begin. Like, yeah, we talked about this with Magician season 3, was that, I really, there was a lot of times in my life where I felt like I was waiting on a job offer, or I was waiting on, just something to happen to push my life in a direction rather than actually, seizing control of that direction.
All right. That's kind of a broad thing. I was looking for a little bit more specific, but all right.
Okay.
To me, something that I was like forced into patience, kicking and screaming kind of a thing, was waiting for Peter. Because it was 3 whole years, the bulk of it, us not being able to get pregnant. And I had like convinced myself, I'm like, whatever, like I'm just never going to have a kid. I'm never going to be able to get pregnant again. And this is just kind of what it is.
Yeah, and that scene with, to talk about another Netflix original show, Dead to Me, where the Judy is in that miscarriage group, saying that, you're not broken. Yeah, you turning to me and saying, I would have never been able to say this before Peter. Yeah,
no, I would not have. In fact, if you had told me that, I would be like, F you, you don't even know. I just wouldn't be able to do that. Anyway, that's another show that we should have an episode on that we want to explore more. So what strategies have you gained over the years while you've had to be patient? Like, what are some good things to distract yourself while you're waiting?
Well, for one, is definitely reading. Books have been fantastic, and podcasts as well have been fantastic in helping me to wait for things, distracting myself with other myself. Well, yeah, I guess in a way, and myself with other topics, with other things that I can kind of do and kind of play with a little bit, and that ultimately I think helps me to free up my mind to be able to accept whatever answer that I get that I'm waiting on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For me, it's definitely art. Like since I've had to go through some grief recently, that's something that you have to be patient with yourself on.
Yeah.
And trying to move forward. And so I knew that. And so I picked the largest, most time-consuming cross-stitch pattern that I could find on Amazon and ordered that.
And finished it.
And I finished it, yeah. But it took months. It took months to finish, which in itself takes a lot of patience, but I was using it as a distraction while I was waiting for myself to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's another thing that we could have also brought up, but healing isn't an overnight process, and it's never really done. I think wounds will be scars eventually, but the scars will never go away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's fine. Absolutely. I was just my cross-stitching time was like the worst of it. Like that, it was like the hurricane part of my grief. So yeah, I just needed some calm during the storm.
All right. So if you have anything to say about this episode of the OA, or if you wanted to watch the OA with us, you have an opportunity to comment about anything that we have talked about in previous episodes, or any of our previous episodes about whatever pop culture item that we have talked about. Mm-hmm. We also want to take a moment to give a shout out to Smash Bomb. So if you have not yet downloaded the app, you can pretty much review almost anything on Smash Bomb. It's a lot of fun.
Like media stuff,
apps, actually some technology.
Yeah.
So it's not just media, but you can also review technology and technology items and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So go check them out. There is a review on our website, which has recently changed too. So Kathy's going to tell you about how to get a hold of us.
Yep. So our Facebook and Instagram are still the same, at Patron Saints of Pulp Culture. Our website now is patronsaintsofpulpculture.org.
www.patronsaintsofpulpculture.org.
Do you have to have the www?
You do in some browsers like Chrome. Like Chrome will force you to have it.
That's weird. Anyway.
Yeah.
I just kind of thought it was implied. And then, because all websites start with that for the most part.
Yeah.
And then also too, during the month of June, just kind of a heads up, June is very busy. Like there's only like 7 days out of June where we don't have anything planned.
Yeah.
Other than work. So we've decided that for June, we're just going to have a little summer break from the podcast. So you can always listen to our back catalog because we have a ton of episodes there.
Yeah, we have over 100 episodes for you to listen to about a lot of different things. Even a 45-minute episode on a 5-minute music video.
Yep, so go check that out.
Go check those out. And we will be back in July. We have one more episode before we take our break. It will probably be on Game of Thrones Season 8.
Probably. It will be.
It will be. Yes, next week we will be talking about Game of Thrones Season 8 because it's finalizing tonight. And we'll be able to talk about the whole next week.
Oh, God, I'm so nervous.
So, with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.